Do you like a good period drama? Do you enjoy a whimsical fairy tale? Are you a sucker for historical dresses? You are in the right place. Let's go together to discover all the juicy details of a favorite movie of mine. Ever After, a Cinderella Story was made in 1998. It stars Drew Barrymore as Cinderella and the cruel, evil Angelica Houston as the stepmother. And the prince is Doug Ray Scott. The first reason I love this movie is because it's a story about women, starring women and all their power of agency. Plus, it's a fairy tale and I'm always up for that. A major reason of me loving it is also the beautiful setting. It takes place in France during the Renaissance, in its beautiful countryside, in amazing castles and lovely meadows. There is a touch of whimsy and everybody is dressed in Italian Renaissance fashion. There is even some rooting in actual historical fact, as La Grande Dame, Jean Moreau, tells at the beginning the Brothers Grimm. For example, we have Prince Henry, son of King Francis. Francis who? Francis, the rival of Henry VIII. That guy, the one of the Field of Golds, where those two kings pretended to be best of friends and it was just an excuse to show off? Yes! So it means that Henry is the future Henry II and marries Caterina de' Medici. Exactly. But don't get carried away, it's still a fairy tale and he marries Cinderella at the end. Oh well, he never liked Caterina. He had a mistress all his life anyway. Back to the point, let's establish more or less a time frame. So we know that we have real King Francis and real Prince Harry. But the one that really gives us a clue is a very unusual godmother, which is not a fairy, but it's a genius, Leonardo da Vinci. We know Leonardo traveled to France in 1516. I guess as a starting point, it's a date as good as any. Are our characters dressed like they should be? If we reference to the information we have about the time, we see that our characters don't look anything like them. I want, though, more than look at historical accuracy, to look at what a costume is. It's very important because a costume has many roles. First is to give us information about time and place. Second information that a costume gives us is about the character. Who the character is, how old, what is his social standing. Because it's also very important to describe the relationship to the other characters. Last but not least, a costume describes to us the aesthetic of the director or designer. It's quite important because they tend to highlight certain aspects of the story or the fashion of the time, forgetting or discarding others. I would love to start with our main character, Danielle. She is the starting point for everybody else. When we first meet her, when she's grown up, she wears an Italian gamurra, which is a dress with high waist, tight in the bodice, and separate sleeves. Underneath she wears a chemise that we can see at elbows and wrists. So if we consider time and place, this costume gives us the information that we should be in Italy around the 1490s. We know already, of course, that we are in France, so that should be wrong, but who cares? It's a fairy tale, and I guess it was an aesthetic choice, so it's still a check for me. If we consider the time, and we said we are in the 1516, of course she is a bit outdated. At that time, gamurras had very wide sleeves and very full skirts, but I think it still works, and the time frame is correct at the end. So another check for me. What does the costume tell us about the character? We can see she is a working class woman. The dress is very simple, not heavily decorated, of a cheap material. So we can assume that she now works as a servant. What does not work for this look is of course her flowing hair. And we can see that her friends Paulette and Louise wear amazing and really well done head covers. I think that's another indication that Danielle is actually not a servant. she wears her hair down, as do her stepsisters. So she's more connected to them as a young woman than to her servants. Another check, I would say. Another interesting detail is the color. She wears a lovely blue, and it was a very popular choice. But Danielle is the only one to wear it throughout the movie. And as we will discover later, it's the favorite color of the prince. So we know she's already connected to the guy in some way. What about the rest of her family and her affinity to them? We already said that she is connected to Marguerite and Jacqueline by her hairstyle, but the style of their dresses is quite different. They're all three wearing gamoras. Marguerite and Jacqueline are actually wearing the correct style and fashion for the 1520s. So you can see very wide sleeves and very full skirts. Also talking about colors, we see that Jacqueline, who is nicer and closer to Danielle, is also wearing some bluish-greenish dresses, while Marguerite sports some very nice reds or very warm oranges. And a detail I love is that all of them are wearing stockings, as it should be. Marguerite's are even red. It's a beautiful detail. But let's introduce the fabulous, cruel, very human stepmother. She's the one with more costume changes even than Danielle. She has 10, 14 if we count also the mix and matches with sleeves and headwear, which I find a very lovely detail, being very historically accurate. Ludmila is the strongest woman in the show. Not Danielle, not the queen. She is boss. She is always dressed for the show. Never a moment of discomposure. But how does she relate to Danielle? She also wears an Italian gamorra, but she's tighter laced and of course of darker colors and richer materials. When the women are all together, Ludmila actually matches more Danielle than her own daughters. She always stands out though, because of the complexity and all the details we can discover and appreciate. She's a very complex woman and very self-aware. Generally, she is striking for her headwear. When she first arrives to the house, and all throughout the movie, she wears these fabulous headpieces that are a bit of a crossover between a German-style headpiece and an Italian balzo. I love this because they give her such an air of authority, like a halo or a crown, but at the same time, she looks a bit ridiculous compared to the other characters. Even when she's not wearing anything on her head, her hairstyles are amazing and the details fabulous. Generally, her colors always tend to dark, tans, black or greens. The only time she wears something bright is right at the beginning, before all her hopes of a happy marriage are crushed. Now that we met all the main women characters, let's see what Danielle gets up to. She wants to rescue the servant and friend Maurice, and for that she lends a dress from her pal, the painter Gustave. A lovely dress again. End of the 15th century, from the look of it, it gives us a chance to see her taking off the working dress, with lovely details of the partlet and the lacing underneath. Unfortunately, all these details are missing from the second dress, the noblewoman one. It's all kind of sewn together. I guess it was for practical reasons. We can understand. Forgiven but not forgotten. The noblewoman dress is very important because it sets the tone to all her meetings to Prince Henry. She meets him when she rescues Maurice with his help, and he is wearing what I like to call his rebel look, which is more rough compared to the elegant Danielle at this time. Let's discover how her relationship to the prince develops. The next time they meet, she is swimming in her chemise, so not very ladylike. But that's exactly the point, because she confuses and enticed the prince with her disregard of rules and her passion for life. The next 2 times they meet before the infamous ball, Danielle is the perfect gentlewoman, almost. Danielle first wears the light blue dress disregarded by Marguerite, making a shining appearance at the door, and then a beautiful burgundy velvet gown when she goes to the ruins with Henry. High waist, check. Ethereal hairstyle, check. Separate sleeves, check. She stays true to her style. A brief note to the gypsies scene. Her pantaloons are not historically correct, but we can understand that we want to protect Danielle's dignity while climbing trees. How does the prince live up to Danielle? For most of the movie, he wears what I already called his rebel outfit. If we look at all his changes throughout the movie, we can see that the prince, like Danielle, remains true to his style. He always wears cream-colored hoses, which were in fashion since the mid of the 15th century. At the beginning of the 16th, we already see the first appearance of breeches, which would be the probably more fashionable choice. But we can still accept it as historical correct. He also wears high-knee boots. Again, they go very well with his hoses. But I'm sure he wouldn't have worn them at court or at balls. This, I guess, is the choice to make him look a bit more masculine. Otherwise, we would have seen him look more like his outfit during the tennis match. And for some reason, that's not considered macho enough. When we look also at all his doublets, we see that they look very similar in cut and shape. Wide sleeves, tight forearms, and very short. They are correct historically, and we can observe that when he's at court, the materials get richer and richer. I love the detail of his wedding look, with all the anklets and the chemise peeking from underneath. He looks also very dandy in his black doublet. Black was very fashionable because they just discovered how to do proper dyes for it, which would be very correct for the 1520s. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but the other more vile suitor of Danielle, Monsieur Lepieux, sports a very similar look. I don't know, maybe it was the outfit to go grocery shopping. So, if we look at Danielle and Henry, how do they look together? I think they work perfectly, because Henry's rebel look is rough enough to match Danielle, and Danielle is elegant enough to match Henry as a prince. I think they meet quite well in the middle. Let's now talk about the climax of the story, the ball. We are first introduced to all the other characters. We see Henry in his fabulous cream gold-colored outfit. Let's not look at the black boots. Jacqueline being her true self, because that's what we like most, in one of her two green dresses. Marguerite is wearing a new dress that we cannot really see very well. We can just notice the beautiful feathers framing her face. They are as extravagant as they can be. But, of course, the dark star of the ball is Ludmila. She wears a dress that is very Italian in cut, we can see the high waist, but the sleeves give a strong hint of German fashion. And the horned headwear, courtesy of a Burgundian trend in the 15th century. She looks to the point, the evil stepmother that will ruin your ball at all costs. Different from everybody else is Danielle, who makes her appearance as a butterfly. Her dress is like fluid silver, and it's different from all the other gowns we see at the ball. Her dress is very interesting, because it's still a style fashionable at the end of the 15th century in Italy, but it seems referring specifically to Venice. The neckline is round and lower, showing a bit of shoulders, while her hair, coiled up like a crown, looks like an earlier fashion. And I like to think it's because it's her mother's dress, and so it makes completely sense. So everybody looks quite different from each other, but there is still a sense of cohesion that makes the scene work very well, with Danielle shining like a fallen star. Of course, Henry behaves like an ass, and consequently Danielle is sold to Monsieur Lepieux. But being a tough girl and knowing that she has to fend for herself, she's slicing him up. Luckily, Henry shows up anyway, with a slipper and a marriage proposal. I think he saved more himself than Danielle. And did you know that the slippers were designed by Ferragamo? Now, only a good revenge scene is missing to complete the fairy tale. Ludmila and her daughters are invited to court and to present themselves in style. That means Marguerite and Jacqueline as their usual self, and Ludmila in her finest. A nice touch to note is that Ludmila's outfit looks very similar to the one she wore at her first appearance, to the point that their headwear is the same. I read this as an indication that again all her hopes are going to be crushed. Can I have a rant moment? A gentlewoman would not gather her skirt up. The skirts were the right length for walking on a flat floor. But I guess it's quite comical and it works for the scene. End of the rant. Ludmila is crushed from her height and mighty position when Danielle reveals herself as the new crown princess. As befitting her new position, Danielle is wearing colors that matches her new status and the royal family, so dark reds and browns. But she remains true to her style and she looks like a princess of the 1490s. I love this movie. I would like to do some honorable mentions for all the other details that we see on extras or other characters in the movie. There are some questions that still remain unanswered. Would Harry have married Margarita for real? Did Gustav kill Tobey Maguire? And who is Juanito? I hope you enjoyed this little review. Please click like if you did and subscribe to my new channel for more. Thank you for listening.